Welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee of Telford and Wrekin Council. This evening's meeting is held in public to ensure that all those involved or interested in the planning applications and process can see and hear how the decisions are made. It is important that the speakers are able to present their information without interruption, and that the council members of the committee are able to hear and consider the material presented. Please note that the microphones are for the live stream only. Only those people who have been notified are able to speak. I would ask everyone else to remain quiet, not to interrupt the meeting, and to allow the members to make their decisions. I would remind everyone that council meetings can be photographed or recorded, and ask all participants to recognise the importance of the planning process. And finally, please could I ask that everyone silence or turn off their mobile phones. Okay, thank you. Before we start, Sonia has asked me to present herself tonight. It's her first time as the legal advisor for the council, so welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Did she feel intimidated?
Well, between a thorn between two roses. No, you're all right.
You're never going to get anywhere in life.
No. Anyway, right. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Have I not received, Chair?
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Yes, Peter.
Not so much of a declaration of interest, but I would like it noted that on the item that is in closed meeting, I am the West Ward Borough member for Newport. I do update residents with information and follow-ups from any meetings or any decisions made, but I have not made any comments or decisions myself. I wait until such times as we've discussed it as a committee.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting of the 18th of October. October. Yes, Giles. There are a couple of alterations, or one alteration. Just to let you know that I think Sonia Sharp was here in the. So if that can be put on record that she was present, but she wasn't on the at the.
Yeah, I was at the meeting.
You're at the meeting.
Yeah, I was at the meeting.
Okay. All right. So thank you. So was there any other alteration? No. Okay. Right. Any deferred or withdrawn applications?
None, Chair.
Thank you. Site visits?
Not as yet, Chair.
Not as yet. So that puts us straight into the planning applications for determination. So the next one is TWC 2023-0058, the site of Ridgeways, Hem Lane, Halesfield, Telford, Shropshire. Can I ask Martha to present the application?
As members will recall, this full planning application for the erection of 31 dwellings, garages, landscaping and means of access on the site of Ridgeways, Hem Lane was debated at the previous committee meeting and was deferred in order to allow for a site visit to be undertaken and for further highways information to be presented. The site visit took place at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. As confirmed previously, the application is being determined by members as it represents a major development and requires a Section 106 agreement. I understand that there are speakers on this application, so I'll pass back to Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, can I ask Mr. Andy Williams, the applicant representative, for the application to speak? All right, thank you.
Is this live? Yes. The proposals were the subject of a pre-application inquiry when it was confirmed that the principle of development on this site which is inside the development boundary is acceptable and in accordance with local plan policy. It should also be noted that the site is now an allocation in the new draft local plan, which was approved by the council for consultation. The proposal should be seen in the wider context of a 300 dwelling development at the Hem immediately opposite to the north of the site. Because of the specific site characteristics and constraints, it was agreed that the development should be a low density scheme of aspirational homes, and as in other previous instances in the borough, such as at Bratton and Church Aston, a financial payment in lieu of on-site affordable housing would be appropriate in this instance, in addition to education, recreation, open space and highways contributions, which together amount to a significant sum of around £850,000. The proposals reflect the advice provided by officers, and they have since been the subject of various revisions to satisfy all internal and statutory consultees that support the application. The report addresses the issue of access. It should be noted that Hem Lane will be improved from its junction with Halesfield 1, including the provision of a new access into the site and the construction of a footpath that will benefit future occupiers of the development and also other users of the lane. There will also be a pedestrian link from the open space to the public footpath that joins the southern part of the site to provide connectivity to the employment area to the south. It is evident that some local residents over the border in Shropshire favour Hem Lane being a no-through road. I simply say that if the highway authorities consider this appropriate, it is already within their powers to enforce an existing traffic regulation order to this effect, completely separate from this application. In the meantime, your highway section has confirmed that the proposals will have no material impact on the functioning of the lane. The proposal will deliver a low-density scheme of exceptional quality and design, incorporating ample parking provision, electric charging points, solar panels on every property, generous private and communal amenity space, and a variety of green space, including an orchard, sustainable drainage pond, public open space, all within an attractive and well-landscaped setting. The development will be well screened and will have no material impact upon its surroundings, save for the beneficial improvement of the northern part of Hem Lane. The applicants have done everything that have been asked of them and required of them, and the proposals fully accord with the relevant policies of the local plan. Your officers are clear that the proposals are appropriate and entirely acceptable, and so it will come as no surprise that I urge you to accept their recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you. Can I now ask Mr. Edward Bradley, a member of the public, against the application?
There's a few issues we've got with Hem Lane. The police have said that it should be enforced that it's a no-through road, and I've asked the councils and the highway to look at that. So we've had correspondence with the police. We've been in touch with both lots of councils, Telford and Wrekin and Bridge North, and waiting for correspondence. One of the respondents from Bridge North was funds wasn't available, and we had no real replies from Telford and Wrekin at this moment in time. The other big issue I've got is when people are coming off the new proposed estate is the visibility from down Hem Lane. How can they provide adequate visibility where it encroaches on Bridge North and Telford? So when they come out onto that junction, visibility down the lane is very, very low. So how they're going to be able to do that when they're going to go into a different borough to make that an acceptable amount of visibility for people coming up the lane. The other thing I want to have a look at is how they intend to monitor and control the storm water off the site. We're already getting problems off the other development further around, where it's discharging lots of silt into our pool at the moment, and there haven't been adequate controls at the moment where they're going to discharge into the stream. So I would like to know what the intentions are, where the stormwater goes, and obviously there's a lot of hard standing to be introduced to that site. That's more or less it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 You got another minute. If you're all right. Thank you. Right. Can I ask Martha to?
In regards to the principle of development, it is reiterated that the site falls within the urban boundary of Telford, and as such a principle of development is considered to be acceptable. It is acknowledged that the site is currently semi-rural in nature, however it is well contained with mature boundary treatments which will be retained. The green belt land to the east of the application site will also not be affected. It is highlighted that a scheme for 299 dwellings was approved by members in August 2022 to the north of this site, which will result in an alteration to the character of the wider area. In respect of highways impacts, officers would like to take this opportunity to confirm in full the highway works proposed as part of this application. In order to access the development site, a new access will be created with visibility splays of 2.4 metres by 43 metres. This visibility splay is considered to be acceptable by the local highways authority. The existing site access will be retained, but this will only be used by the existing property on the site, which will be retained. The £7,000 Section 106 contribution, which has been requested by the local highways authority, relates solely to the works required to lower the speed limit of Hem Lane from a 60-mile-an-hour road to a 30-mile-an-hour road, and the installation of appropriate signage to advertise this. As part of the Section 278 application, the applicant is also proposing to widen the portion of Hem Lane, which sits between the application site and the junction of Halesfield 1, to 5 metres wide, so that 2 cars can pass. A traffic calming / build-out feature will also be installed on Hem Lane, which will considerably reduce the speed of travelling vehicles. Furthermore, the applicant is proposing to install a new 1.2 metre wide footpath along Hem Lane, which will connect to the site to the junction of Halesfield 1, in order to promote sustainable transport. In connection with this, a tactile crossing point would be installed in the vicinity of Hem Lane and the Halesfield 1 junction, allowing pedestrians to safely cross onto the existing pedestrian facilities along Halesfield 1. In respect to connectivity to Sturchley and the facilities located therein, such as the school, officers would highlight that a number of pedestrian and vehicular improvements have been secured as part of the separate planning application located to the north of the site for 299 dwellings. This site lies approximately 300 metres away from the site being discussed by members tonight. These works include the construction of a new roundabout on Halesfield 1, which will provide safe pedestrian crossing points within this area. Furthermore, this separate consent also includes a series of pedestrian and cyclist routes linking the site onto Nedge Lane, where a scheme to completely pedestrianise the lane and restrict vehicles travelling along it was agreed via the planning process. Once these works have been completed, the scheme will take pedestrians and cyclists directly towards Sturchley Centre without having to navigate across Sturchley Interchange. Whilst it is noted that these works relate to a separate planning application, it is confirmed that works have commenced on this adjacent site, and once fully implemented, pedestrians and cyclists associated with this application will be able to utilise these facilities. In light of the above works, the local highways authority have confirmed that the mitigation measures proposed as part of the application are considered sufficient to fully mitigate the proposals in both capacity and highway safety terms. In regards to the Section 106 contributions requested by the Council's education team, and members' concerns of there not being any contributions towards primary school provisions, the Council's education team have confirmed that they have not requested any contributions towards this, as there are currently sufficient places within the immediate area. In respect to the proposed off-site affordable housing contribution, it is noted that the majority of people accessing affordable housing may have access to a vehicle. However, this would be a presumption and would also present a constraint over who could access the affordable housing at this site. As such, it is considered that an off-site contribution is considered to be acceptable and is similar to other applications which have been approved within the borough, namely ones at Bratton and Church Aston. It remains the case that there have been no technical objections from the Council's highways, drainage, ecology, healthy spaces, education or affordable housing teams, and as such, the officer recommendation is to approve the application subject to a Section 106 agreement, conditions and informatives. Thank you.
Right, I'll open it up to the members. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping there'd be a highways officer here tonight, but not to be. Okay. The site visit today was well worth the effort. Really was worthwhile. We could actually see for ourselves the impact on the roads and the safety particularly. I've got no real grief with the development itself because it ticks all development boxes. There's nothing negative there. There's no reason to refuse it. The concern was always Hem Lane itself. Now, today when we walked down, we did point out how dangerous a tactile crossing, not my favourite type of crossing at all, is in the position that was suggested, because there's a blind bend with traffic coming round very fast. So we as members said, can we have this further down on the right hand side? And it was suggested yes, and they would extend the footpath on the right hand side at the bottom round to roughly where there's a standard, a traffic light, sorry, a street light, where it would be more useful in the night time as well. The other thing we didn't want to see, as a gentleman has spoken about, the as you come out of the newly adopted entrance, why can't we have a no right turn there, left only? Because as we saw, that's roughly speaking exactly where the boundary is with Shropshire Council. So they don't want, they say no entry at the one side, we say no entry at the other side. Well, the no through road, we both say it. So a left only out of the new estate would make the road safer. So I'm hoping this evening, because we did discuss it earlier, we'd have some kind of agreement that certainly that tactile crossing is moved to a safer position, which I feel it must be, and the possibility of the right no right turn on Hem Lane itself. Just to finish, as you're going to mention a few things, Martha, the gentleman asked about stormwater, if we could cover that off as well, please.
Okay, so in terms of the tactile crossing, obviously following our discussions today in terms of it being moved, so initially it would have been where the new footpath is going along Hem Lane, it would have been immediately following that. Following our discussions with the highways officer today, he's got no issue with it being moved to the other side of the road so that it's further down away from the junction of Hem Lane, to increase the visibility, and obviously noting the speed that traffic uses that road. We're happy to put in place the appropriate signage. I've also received confirmation from the applicant that they are happy with that arrangement as well. They're happy to implement that, and that would be part of the section 278 agreement. So I have put a recommended condition on my report which requires details of off-site highway works, so that can be controlled through condition and the section 278 works. In terms of the no right turn, the difficulty lies, as you're aware, with the fact that Hem Lane is part Telford and Wrekin Council and part Shropshire Council. So we did consult Shropshire Council as part of this application, who came back with a no objection and didn't provide any comments on the proposal. If at that point they had asked for any highway improvement works, any calming measures on their side of the road, we obviously would have taken that into consideration as part of the application. That being said, following on from some recent correspondences with neighbours and the police, I know that there are discussions taking place kind of behind the scenes with the highways team and the police and Shropshire Council in terms of moving this forward. You'll note as well that with the highway improvement works, with it going down from a 60 mile an hour to a 30 mile an hour, we are actively engaging with Shropshire Council as to whether they want that to extend over the entirety of Hem Lane, so within their borough as well. So I don't think it's necessarily something that we could control as part of this application because it does fall outside of our ownership. But what we can do is continue those conversations with Shropshire Council to see if that's something. So where the site access was today, so the road to the right, that's Shropshire Council.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we could say on our side of it, no right turn.
I think it would be down to how that would be enforced.
Or left turn only, phrase it how you will. But we have control over that, surely, because it's our side of the boundary. So I would hope that that could happen. In terms of the tactile crossing, it was also mentioned that there would be signage and road display to be able to say to people belting round that bend, caution, people crossing.
Yes.
That will happen.
Yeah, so the highways team were clear that they wanted the tactile crossing. We would then look at a different road surface so that there's a clear demarcation to advertise that there is a crossing at that point, and the associated signage to let people know that that's when they approach.
Okay, because with the exit and entrance being in Telford and Wrekin's land, really, surely we control how people go out of that road, because although it was mentioned, it won't become a rat run today, I still firmly believe that when those 300 odd houses are built and people are coming from the Shiftel end of town, of the area, they're going to say, I'll nip down Hem Lane because it's quicker. So we do need to make that road as safe as possible. And if it is no through road, both ends, and there are TROs in place saying that, surely we just enforce that.
I think we were hoping for a more combined approach throughout Hem Lane, so that it was very, very clear to drivers that any restrictions that were in place would hopefully run for the entire duration of Hem Lane. So that's why we've wanted to engage with Shropshire Council. At the moment, the highways officer who has assessed the application and assessed all the information contained therein doesn't feel that any restrictions such as that are necessary at this time, but we will continue those conversations with Shropshire Council to see if that's something that we could have for a more combined approach.
Stormwater, just so that gentleman knows, please.
Yeah, the stormwater. Just having a look at my previous report. I had put that the Council's drainage team had initially objected to the proposal. That was on the basis of insufficient information being submitted. However, further information was submitted, and the drainage team were now happy with the proposal, subject to conditions and informatives.
Okay, thank you. And one final thing, and I'm sorry I will shut up in a moment. It was helpfully pointed out this afternoon that there will be paths across from roughly, 100 yards up Hem Lane, across into this application, so people will have a choice to walk that way safely, and there is a safe walk that comes down the back of the development behind the recycling centre. So there are good and positive ways to walk from it. The big issue for all of us here, I think, was the safety of that dreadful, and I use that word, usually do, dreadful crossing, which isn't really a crossing. That's the problem with it. So it needs to be made as safe as possible. I will shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you. Since the last meeting and side visit today, a lot of the concerns I had to some degree have been extinguished. However, I would agree with Councillor Scott that, and the evidence was already there within the road, of physical barrier which were bollards that prevented people going through that. Who removed them and why, I don't know. From the Shropshire side of the A4169, it is clearly identified that access only through Hem Lane to the existing properties. Well, to our boundary, there are very few, because what's it called, Ridgeway or whatever it's called, it is within our boundary. Those bollards were on our boundary line, so we could reinstate them and prevent any right turning from there. People coming out and entering right and left, that's within our gift. And at some stage, I think I would like to see this authority writing to Shropshire County Council Highways Department and thanking them for their involvement and their prompt responses to our concerns, because they haven't been forthcoming. They could have let us know that the traffic order, when it was situated, what it said, and a lot of this could have been resolved beforehand. Similarly with the police have got to know what that traffic order for that lane says. I can't believe they can't find that in their archives and give us that detail. That has to be available, and it should have been made available, and a lot of this confusion could have been eliminated.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate, obviously, those conversations are happening. The police are involved with that as well. So we will continue to liaise with them directly outside this process.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I think much
Janice,
much of what we identified today has already been mentioned, and the safety of the site, really, the egress and access is the major issue.
Okay, thank you.
Especially in a time when we're trying to encourage people to walk or cycle and not use cars.
True, very true. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Right, what we do is recommendation to just trying to find it. Where are we? What's the page?
Just so we're clear, if we move this and vote on it, it will be that there's a condition that the footpath will be extended to the right of the bottom and the tactile crossing moved further down that road, so it's a lot further away from that bend which we discussed today.
Yeah, so there's a condition that I've recommended in terms of details of off-site highway works. So they will have to give us details as part of a discharge conditions application, and that will tie into the 278 application as well from a highways perspective.
Happy then, please. Yeah, I can move it then.
And could I quickly add to that? My concerns about the right turn and the potential physical barrier there to prevent vehicles using that lane as a rat run and anything else. We are not affecting the people who live further down the lane on the Shropshire side gaining access or egress from their properties in any way, shape or form. This makes this entire development a lot safer.
Duly noted. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Recommendation is to give delegated authority to grant full planning permission, and the applicant landowner enter into a section 106 agreement with the local planning authority, with all the provisions of off-site affordable housing, education provision, highway works, enhancements and upgrade to off-site play and sports provisions, and following all the conditions that are listed in the application. So, yeah, can we have a...
And that including what we said tonight about the access and egress?
No. So the answer from the planning officer was that discussions are currently being undertaken, and so the determination of what you're commenting on about Hem Lane and the desire about turning right, not turning right, etc., that's up in the air. So that's not a promise. She's not made any promises about that. She just said that's going to carry on.
I understand that, the legal side of that, but what I'm saying is I am positive that traffic regulation order already exists within Shropshire, and that is why I'm disappointed they haven't come forward and told us it's there, that prevents that happening. Now, somebody must have put those 3 physical barriers there, or those 3 bollards on our boundary, so I would imagine that was the borough of Telford and Wrekin. Why they were taken out, I don't know. I am aware of accidents that brought about the traffic regulation order, and a subsequent accident that meant a metal barrier, which is further down the lane within Shropshire, was subsequently removed. There's no reason why that physical barrier isn't in our gift. We don't need Shropshire's approval, it's our boundary.
That's been mentioned a few times now, and the answer is that those things are going to be looked into. But going back to the application, even without those things, is satisfactory enough for the planning officer and Val to recommend to you to pass it tonight. So that's the decision you've got to make now, because the chair has read out the recommendation. So you either accept the reassurances of the planning officer that those things are currently being discussed and being looked into, or otherwise. But at the moment, the chair's asked you to vote on the recommendation.
And I think from my point of view that your comments will be minuted and they will be taken into consideration when we're discharging the conditions and considering those, as well as processing the 278 agreement.
I have no doubt about that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can we have a vote for the application? Against? Or an abstain?
I abstain.
Abstain. Okay, so one abstention and 6 for. That means that the recommendation for this application is passed. Okay, thank you. Item 7, scheme of delegation. Can I ask Val to present everything regarding the scheme of delegation?
Thank you, Chair. So this is one of our strategic matters in terms of that it is a planning committee decision in terms of how we determine our applications. The LPA must consider and determine planning applications in accordance with legislation prescribing the Town and Country Planning Development Management Procedure Order 2015. On an average, our authority considers around 1,200 planning applications annually. There's around 500 of those which are full applications, 500 householder applications, around 50 outline planning applications and 50 reserve matters each year, and then a number of other minor applications which involve listed buildings and TPOs and conservation areas. Now, the scheme of delegation is set out in the Council's constitution that the Planning Committee has a responsibility and the delegated powers to act on behalf of the Council in relation to these matters. And approximately 90% of the applications are considered by planning officers under the current scheme of delegation. And so 10% is considered by Planning Committee. The criteria in which you consider it at this moment was adopted in 2013, and that's set out in the report. And specifically those criteria sort of around the council being as applicant, as the landowner, and has a financial interest in the site, and the scheme is a major application, along with sites have formally requested to be considered by the ward member and relevant parish council, as well as Section 106 financial contributions, are the main reasons why Planning Committee consider those applications. And the current scheme, the meetings are held once a month. Previously that used to be actually once every 3 weeks. So it's good practice for us to consider and review our scheme of delegation on a regular basis, noting that we haven't done this for some time. We are looking at this moment in terms of what our statutory performance measures are, in addition to those legislation changes that are coming out. Now, we have statutory time frames in which we must determine planning applications. Those time frames are actually going to be tightened up in terms of our planning guarantee of where we must consider our applications, and applicants can also request a refund if we don't determine those within that time. In addition, we have new legislation coming out around the Environment Act, which has introduced mandatory biodiversity net gain, which will come into place in January of next year for all major applications, and then for subsequent non-major applications in April 24. So we're likely to see a high number of Section 106 mitigation measures going to be required from those applications. In addition, with the tightening up of the planning legislation for us to determine applications, we've reviewed the applications that come to planning committee and consider that those can be tightened in terms of the framework which you consider them. I've set out in the report a proposed criteria that highlights where the council's interest is actually reduced to more of a strategic major application rather than one as just any major application. It will still come to planning committee if it's determined if it's an application submitted by a director or an elected member, and importantly, where the relevant ward member and parish council consider it is relevant to come to planning committee. That's very important. It represents our local communities. You represent the constituents of the area. We've reviewed that procedure as well and refined the process and that call-in procedure, and part of that is part of the appendices that's attached to the report. In addition, if there's a significant number of applications which have got a number of representations that are against that application, that would also come to planning committee based on either the call of the service delivery manager at the time, myself, or the area planning officers. So it doesn't stop any of those procedures. So where those other ones have dropped away, they can still come to planning committee if there are local concerns. If you as ward members or if the town and parish councils wish them to come to planning committee, it's still got that catch-all. So the scheme of delegation is set out before you on that recommendation, along with the new appendices. So our members are asked to consider that new scheme of delegation.
Okay, thank you, Val. Thank you. Yeah, opening it to the members. Yes, Giles.
Does the announcement by the Chancellor in the budget and new planning regulations that have been discussed today in Parliament, have you had time to hear what the new proposals are in terms of turnaround of planning applications? And
I haven't seen today's. We've been involved in recent discussions this last week over consultation from the government around tightening up of the planning determination time. So that goes, instead of where we've got a major application, or which would be 13 weeks, and a minor application is 8 weeks. The new planning guarantee looks to determine it within 16 weeks. And they've removed, in terms of the current aspects which we've been consulted upon, to remove the extensions of time. So that tightens the framework even more. In addition, the framework for the planning guarantee, which is set out in legislation the other week, that is really tightening down from 26 weeks to 16 weeks. So we really must determine, and that's also processing not only the decision, but any Section 106 agreement within that time as well.
yeah, because there appeared to be new financial implications on the planning application taking too long.
Yes.
That was my understanding today. I haven't looked at it in detail because it was only this afternoon, but there appeared to be financial implications for planning departments in terms of refunds to developers and potential people who are putting planning applications in. And just as a second question to you, because you've got more experience than me in this, do you think that it was helpful to reduce the planning committee meetings from 3 weeks? Change it from 3 weeks to every month? Or do you think it helped move the process on quicker to have them every 3 weeks?
I think in terms of, from our perspective, we're sending it a little bit less to planning committee over the last that last framework of 10 years, because members were tied up considering, say, the likes of planning applications by the council, which were advert considerations, adverts on roundabouts, and those sorts of things. In terms of, from a process point of view, we're able to consider and deal with as technical matters outside of this. It allows members to focus on those strategic ones, those ones that really matter, and being able to represent their communities in that way.
Okay, so you don't think there would be any benefit to returning to a 3 weekly meeting cycle?
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
There's an impact in terms of resource of how we do this, both from planning committee, our officers having to spend a significant amount of time writing those reports, getting them ready when there's still works which are ongoing, and sometimes you will see that in the framework from the planning committee report when it's drafted. because it's 2 weeks between then and actually sitting at committee, so there's always normally an update, and significant amount of work could have happened during that time frame.
Thanks. Yeah, we do appreciate the detail that is put into these reports, because it must take quite a lot of staff time to put these together.
Yeah.
And not only from the planning officer's point of view, but from a democratic services point of view, as well as your own time and resource to go through those reports and visit sites.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask, with the constraints that are being proposed on processing and delivering the plan application to the committee and otherwise, does that affect the statutory time frame in which members of the public have to consult on said application? We're not shortening that time frame as well, are we? Or?
That's set out in legislation under the Development Management Procedure Order, and that's very clear in terms of 21 days. There are some different bits of legislation which shorten things, but it's nothing that we can touch.
Okay.
So we still determine within that framework, but members of the public have 3 weeks, I think it's 4 when it's advertised online, 28 days for making any comments. But if there are any issues in terms of a member of the public or members or parish council being able to come back to us within even that short period of time, we do normally allow a couple of days extension or where required if needed. So we always show discretion as well.
Thank you. Yes, Janice.
With these changes, do we foresee any issues with staffing levels, etc.? Because we must be putting people under a lot of pressure, and are we likely to overlook things? That is there a possibility of that? I mean, today going to do that site visit, really looking at the road and that, really some of that could have been identified before the site visit. So are we putting our people under too much pressure to look at these things? And then if new legislation is coming in, how is that affecting us? Do we need more of a staffing level?
So in terms of new legislation coming in, there's new regulations coming in as well to support resource within the local planning authorities across the country, as planning application fees will be increased, and that's quite a significant rise, 35% on majors and 25% on all other applications. And that's hoped in terms of it will be directed into local planning authorities to deal with resource. In addition, there's funding that's available at the moment that we're waiting for a response from government for around skills funding and the gap that's allowing us then, if successful, will allow us to address capacity issues for a period of time. So hopefully in terms of the support out there from financial resource to be able to support the departments.
Okay, right. Anybody else? Yes, no,
yeah,
Nigel.
Yeah, right. I've just got a couple of concerns on this, because, you know, one of the criteria being dropped is if a departure from policy and officers are recommending approval. Well, surely that's part of our reason why we have a planning committee, is to analyse these things and to discuss them in open debate and make sure that that officer decisions are actually being scrutinised. So I don't agree with dropping that. And I'm a bit concerned about section 106 applications, because applications that deliver 106 contributions and affordable housing, because I mean I don't think any of us have not had some comment on affordable housing, because it's so important. And basically, you know, I just see it being kicked under the table, and we don't have any right of redress unless we're actually sort of reading through every application to see if it does fit in and fit the criteria, and whether or not we call it in. So I would rather that the criteria for coming towards the planning committee was left as it is.
In terms of the matters around, say, Section 106 agreements, if members didn't feel that they wanted to agree to that, and what members need to be prepared for is those additional applications coming forward to committee, holding more committee meetings, and being able to resource those, as well as then the implications on the department to be able to undertake that, bearing in mind those new legislation changes and the fact that we'll be looking to try and aim to get those Section 106 agreements out within a 16-week period of the application landing.
Well, that's why we're here. We're here to scrutinise the applications, and there's fewer applications going to be brought forward. So how are planning applications being scrutinised by us as representatives of residents?
Doesn't mean to say that they can't be called in terms of how that's proposed as the application. In terms of the ward, the parish and town councils can still call those applications in. It doesn't stop them coming here. And if in the event that we felt that it was needed to have the scrutiny as well, we've got the ability to bring it without necessarily recalling. And that's the catch-all. In terms of the one around policy, we're scrutinising everything. There's policy allows for a justification to be dealt with. There's caveats around policy. We've never brought anything to committee recently. There's a departure from policy that hasn't got a justification that's set out within the policy. So therefore, there's been a way that it found to comply with the.
The thing is, though, once it's happened, that's it. It's happened, hasn't it? I mean, there's been quite major, some real major applications that I've only found out about by reading in the paper, and well, that's been approved. So I didn't even know anything about it. So the thing is, though, that I just think that there's a loss of democratic control here, and I would leave it as it is. I mean, we see far fewer applications now than we ever did a few years ago. So sort of like tonight, for instance, there's only really one application. I mean, I know that there's the one coming up later, but I mean, that's a bit of a one-off. We've not done very many of those, but I mean, we used to have 8, 9 applications to consider at each planning meeting. Well, we've not hit that number for quite a considerable number of years now. So, well, maybe good, maybe not good. Yeah. But the thing is, though, that I just think that we need to be a bit careful that we're sort of giving up some of what I think quite important duties, and I do think that it's okay then. So we've got very experienced officers and etc. But everybody needs to have an overview. There needs to be scrutiny on all the decisions. But once these decisions have been taken, there's nothing we can do about it. Then we don't have any input. So I don't think it's a good idea.
Giles.
I was just going to say, can I have some clarity on the strategic major application, 300 plus units? So, say for instance, there was an application that was, 190 units. Is that saying that wouldn't necessarily come to committee?
Yes, it wouldn't come because of that first criteria. However, it does have the catch-all in terms of if a ward member or the town or parish council wanted to call the application in, they could still do so.
My concern with that would be that perhaps the ward member or the parish council might not call it in, but as Telford and Wrekin Borough Councils, we represent not only our wards but the borough of Telford and Wrekin as a whole, and perhaps.
And town and parish councils, as part of these changes, have got very strict criteria as to how they can call it, and very often town and parish council call things in. And if it doesn't fit the criteria, that's it. It just goes through. Delegate.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do think Councillor Dugmore's got a point really on that. We have to remember that the local plan is being reviewed, and there'll be a lot of stuff coming our way. There will be. There's no getting away from it. I think most communities are going to have something to say, and there'll be a lot of stuff called in. One thing I just want to sort of confirm really, on the sheet there, it does say when someone calls it in, they've got a choice as to whether they speak. Now, should it not be, they have to speak if they're calling it in? Because I can remember at least one or two where someone's called it in, and they haven't even turned up to the meeting itself. If someone's calling it in, I think they need to be here in person, and someone must speak on their behalf. There shouldn't be a choice. At the moment it says yes or no, you can tick the box. Well, it shouldn't be there, in my opinion. It should be part and parcel of any calling. If you're serious, then show us how serious you are.
So that can be amended from that perspective, but that's up to you in terms of you, because you'll be forced to.
Personally, I feel it ought to be amended, because you shouldn't be able to call something in and then just turn your back on it and say, well, you've sorted out now. Yeah. You come in and you say to us, the reason is, or the reasons are, these, so now discuss it. But it just shows that anyone could call something in and get away with it, really. You know what people are like, and they're going to be even worse when we start trying to put in a few hundred or even thousands across the borough, which I know has to come, but they will be calling it in. But I wouldn't like them to call it in and not defend their side of the argument.
It does say that at the moment, that they have to attend, doesn't it?
It's desired. It doesn't say that it won't be.
I thought it did. Yeah, that's a separate matter.
Oh, yeah.
It says yes or no. It should say yes, you will.
On the appendix, I think they included the new format sometime. If that was chosen, if members wanted to go down that route, then the consequences, I would need to put a consequence included in that, so that if it was called in and we sent it to committee and drafted it, got it all ready for committee, but then nobody turned up to speak, that it would automatically be withdrawn off the agenda, and then the officers would determine it in accordance with that.
I think really people should know that if they're calling something in, they have to be prepared to attend the meeting and speak. Not necessarily the person who's called in, but somebody on their behalf has to speak.
It does say that. It says the person who's made the request acknowledges they must attend any scheduled planning committee and register to speak on the application. If the town or parish council member or your member is unable to attend, a substitute shall be arranged. If no party registers to speak, the application may be delegated by the committee to officers without formal consideration. So my reading of that is, if the person that's called it in doesn't turn up, this committee can just send it back to officers and not consider it.
But it's got the word may, so it's more that you will do that.
Yeah, it's my understanding that as a committee we have delegated authority, so if that were the case, then it would be down to the committee to make a decision whether we heard that application as such. Also, though, I might say that perhaps because this committee has delegated authority on behalf of Telford and Wrekin Borough Council, some members in wards or parishes might wish to call an application in and then rely on us as elected officials on the delegated committee to make comment and decision on that particular application. So
maybe, but they have a reason or reasons for calling it in, and I feel that they must, not you may, they must come and speak and defend their side of the argument. Otherwise, what's the point of a call-in if it's then thrown back on us? That shouldn't happen.
Well, as Councillor Luter said, if that scenario happens, you've then got the complete discretion to do as you wish, because your other colleagues, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, who's sitting to your right-hand side?
Nigel. Dugmore. Councillor Dugmore.
I mean, you were all for not reducing the amount of matters that the committee is dealing with. So if something's called in, I mean, there may be an explanation why the person hasn't been able to attend. But as Councillor Luter's just said, you've then got the discretion. You can still deal with it, or if you think it's minor and you don't want to deal with it, or you're upset for whatever other reason, you can. At the moment, the way this is written is you can send it straight back to delegated to the head of planning to deal with instead of you discussing it. You got the discretion. So it does suggest that they should attend.
Yeah, but I don't want the discretion, if that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if someone
that's the
feels
opposite what
strongly
Councillor
enough...
Dugmore's saying, isn't it?
Well,
Councillor
No,
Douglas...
I was talking about the actual criteria.
Yeah.
If someone feels, or a parish council or an individual feels strong enough that they call this in for us to discuss it, then they should come to this meeting. They should tell us why.
All right, well, I put it the other way. If that scenario happens, somebody's called it in and then they don't turn up, following what you're suggesting is you don't want the committee to deal with it. It will then go back. It still has to be dealt with. It will go back to the head of planning to deal with. Isn't it better to have it as it's written, which is that you have the discretion? You can choose on the night what you want to do. You can have a vote on it.
No, I don't think so. I think that if someone makes the decision to call something in, then they must show us how brave they are, frankly, and turn up for it and speak.
So are you suggesting an amendment then?
Yes. One that says you will turn up and speak.
And what happens if they don't?
If they don't, then we defer it until such times as they can find themselves not busy enough. However, they can surely, if it's a parish council, for example, they've got enough people there that they could send someone else. It doesn't have to be that person, but they should represent the view of why it was called in.
I wouldn't like to see it deferred. I would want it to be either considered or not considered, and it's either considered by members or it's under delegated power, because I need to manage the service to make sure that we hit the deadlines imposed by government.
I get that, but if the person who's calling it in knows that if they don't turn up and speak, then it won't happen, then they'll turn up and they'll speak if they feel strongly enough about it, surely.
But I just wanted to chip in on that bit around deferral. The deferral's not something
I probably used the wrong word there, but either way, it's too easy to call something in and then not be responsible for how it carries on and how it's finished. And I just think we should make it a little bit more difficult. Well, not difficult. I think we should let's see the sort of colour of their money then, so to speak. If they're serious, come and tell us why. And I'm sure they would, but don't give them the option of backing out.
But your colleagues just said he would welcome knowing more about the applications that are being considered. Councillor Dugmore said that. So if that scenario arose, he wouldn't be concerned that the bottom line that the person hasn't turned up. He'd just be concerned that he's brought it to your attention, and the committee can then decide whether to proceed with it. The way it's written at the moment is possibly a good compromise, because the committee can still decide to send it back to Val and not deal with it, but they can also decide to go ahead if they think it's important enough, which I think Councillor Luter was suggesting he agrees with.
I think we might be cutting our nose off to spite our face if we get an application which somebody's called in, and then we look at it and think, well, actually, it is a relevant application for us to discuss, and say, well, the person that called it in hasn't come, so we aren't going to consider it and we'll refer it back to the planning department. I think I understand it's preferable for the person that's called it in, whether it be a ward council or a parish council, but I think we get into a position where we might actually not discuss an application that warrants us scrutinising it, just because that we're frustrated that person who's called it in hasn't turned up. And I think that would do a disservice to the planning committee, personally. I understand that it's preferable, but there might be circumstances where if someone wasn't there, we'd look at it and say, actually, this does warrant some scrutiny from the planning committee. And I think we'd be doing a disservice to the committee to just say, well, the person hasn't arrived, so we won't be looking at that and then move on. I just think that the current status quo that we have gives us the ability to do that if we want to, but also gives us the flexibility to say, actually, yes, we do want to discuss this and have a look at it and then make a decision on it. So I just don't think that it would be beneficial for us as a committee to go down that route, and we're basically reducing our own options.
We can still make a decision on it if we choose to do that, but we do expect that if they put in an application to call it in, that they will come. Don't give them the choice of Yes or no is what I'm saying. I mean, if we turn up one night and we're here now and we're putting forward, it's been called in by whatever parish council, and they're not here, we can still say, okay, we know how you feel about it, you're not that bothered, we'll now discuss it. But don't give them the opportunity on the call-in form to not come in.
Do they not have to give a written reason when they call in?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's
Yeah.
it.
And doesn't that cover that?
It does. If you actually, in the appendices, it's attached to the report.
47, page 47.
It's there. There's an element there. In addition, where the form is maybe incomplete or incorrectly filled in, we will go back to ward member, town or parish council and ask to confirm matters. And if we're not satisfied that it meets a policy requirement in terms of why it should be coming, we will approach that matter with chair and its chair's call.
So that is sort of dealt with before.
Yes.
Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's necessarily a hill that this committee should be dying on with respect to this call-in application request. But I do somewhat agree with Councillor Luther with regards to we will present it with some information, whether the individual or representative of the organisation, such as the parish council, here or not, to give us the ability to discuss it. You know, we'd already be formed up as a committee, whether that person was here or not. It offers the chance to look at the information they've put forward and debate on that basis if they've called it in for good reason. Them being here or not might necessarily sway the, well, I don't personally feel should sway the decision of this committee, or whether or not the legitimate reasons or otherwise that have been put forward this council for a call-in. You know, that we should still debate those points. We should still talk about those points and make a decision based on that information, whether the individual's here or not. So I don't think it's necessarily, you know, it's not a hill to die on. We shouldn't necessarily have to change the form. People should be here or not have that choice. If they don't, well, more for them. They haven't got their point across. But we shouldn't just shut down the whole process and not discuss that issue. And we should make a decision and not just bat it back onto the officers. If it's that important, it's had a calling request, then it's important enough for this committee to come to a decision and not just put it back on, you know, to officers, I think.
Thank you. Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, the point I was making is nothing to do with whether or not it's called in and how it's called in. My point was that we shouldn't be reducing the two criteria of applications that would automatically come to planning committee. One of which is if a departure from policy and officers are recommending approval, and those applications, if with a section 106 relating to new financial contributions, stroke affordable housing provision. Nothing to do with the debate about whether or not who calls it in or what have you, because those applications that I think should not be delegated to officers and should come towards planning would come automatically. Okay, that was the point I was making.
I heard you.
Yeah.
But you also had a general point, which was that you didn't want your democratic duty to be significantly reduced, and that's what I was referring to. Does Val want to comment on those two specific things again about policy and a section 106? Is there anything that you can suggest?
Not at this moment. I just want to hear in terms of where members are going to go with around that. In terms of while we've talked about local plan, that's a very different issue, which is out for consultation. It will go through evidence base. It will be examined through and go through a public inquiry before it even gets to being an allocation. But when we have allocations, we're obviously addressing them in terms of that's the light of that new policy at that time. So please don't get the two in terms of sitting alongside each other at this moment.
I'm not. Before I die on this hill, which I don't wish to do, all I'm saying is that anyone calling it in should not be given the option to say yes or no they will attend and speak. That's all. I mean, if they don't turn up and speak, we can still determine. We won't send it away. It's just making it too easy for them. But I'll say no more.
It says they must attend.
Sorry?
The form says they must attend.
Yeah, but it then says, will you be speaking yes or no?
No, it doesn't.
Are you looking at the new form that's in?
Well, I thought it was.
Page 47.
47.
Yeah.
Halfway down.
It says section.
Paragraph 5.
Is it your intention for a representative to speak at planning committee? Yes or no? Delete as appropriate.
That's page 48. So page 47, paragraph 5 tells them to.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. One says they must. The application form would suggest they've got a choice.
Let's just make it clear that they must attend and they must speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And that then ties up with paragraph 5, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are you happy to amend that?
Yeah. Okay. There we go. It will be amended.
I'm coming down a hill.
Can I quickly say? Mr. Chairman, can I quickly say?
Yes. Sorry.
If an application is called in, I would prefer to have a written submission within the document which I could read, and if the people don't turn up, they don't turn up.
Exactly.
All you're doing is adding an extra 3 minutes to however many speakers, which prolongs the operation. There are ways that this can be shortened if you want them to be shortened.
Yeah.
I think
A written submission is just as good as somebody sitting there and getting all tongue-tied. You know, sometimes I've sat there and I've thought about what I'm having with tea and forgot exactly why I'm here.
Yeah, you take more in as well that way.
Pardon?
You take more in that way.
You do, yeah.
Yeah.
And I can charge more.
Right.
Thank you for the amendment.
There we go. Anyway, right. The recommendation is to review and agree the scheme of delegation that's set out in section 4.5 and review and agree the procedures for calling, and that is set out in appendix 1. So if everyone is in agreement to that, yeah.
Councillor Morrison.
Yeah.
So 4.
Hold on.
For the amendment.
We've got the amendment for yeah.
It's only for the amendment for the call-in. The call-in.
Just
yes.
take out the yes and no. Yeah. Vote. Sorry.
But that's like a.
It's very minor.
Tiny thing
alteration,
in terms of
but
in terms of process on the form, so I've minuted that and that'll be done. So in terms of then what's on the recommendation.
Okay, so on the recommendations itself, is everyone in agreement to that?
So
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's the main recommendation.
The main recommender.
Both as a whole.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, no?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. Oh, okay.
Not sure.
And then case
That's
5.
5 and
against.
against
1,
2 and abstentions 1, 2.
Oh, hang on.
You voted twice.
No, you can't vote twice. No, you can't.
No, not allowed.
So,
but it's passed.
No.
No.
Wait,
You just need to be clear in terms of who's.
Were you against or were you abstaining?
Are you abstaining or voting against?
I'm voting against, I think. Because I think you could make this a bit better and a bit more expedient as well.
Are you happy, Sam?
Yes, just for clarity. I've lost track. So how many against was it again? I've got 3. 2. Apologies. 5 for, 1 abstention.
One abstention.
Yep, I've got them all. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about the confusion. So there we go. All right. Thank you.
The councillor at the end might need a comfort break for 2 minutes. So do you want to ask?
And that's while we close as well.
Yeah, we're closed now for confidential session anyway. So if you want a break.